Hello, Rabbi.
Hello,
You're in
guys.
you're
Morning. Good
in the
morning,
car
Rabbi.
again.
I'm in the car just because this is the best place I can find to get the Wi-Fi. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
as a weather report for this area, we didn't get most of anything they said we were going to get. At least not where I'm at. I don't know about at the shul, but it's going to the high temperature today is going to be like 42, and once the sun goes down, the temperature continues to drop and won't get above freezing till like midday Tuesday. So
okay,
it's going to be
okay,
an interesting day.
So the thing is ice tomorrow, so you don't really want to be driving around tomorrow.
gotcha. Well, yeah, no, I'm in Charleston, and things are pretty, like I mean, it's a little
Yeah,
chilly,
I
but
looked. I saw you don't really have weather going on there.
Yeah.
Climate weather.
You don't have to. Yeah, we're okay. Thankfully, we're
That's
okay.
good.
I am, I am sitting in my car. I do have a blanket over my legs because it is in the 30s. So I mean, it is
You don't
cold.
have Wi-Fi in your house?
Well, I do, but I have an appointment right after this.
Oh, okay.
So
Sorry.
yeah,
It
no, it's just
just
you just
seems
say
so
yeah.
sudden.
Sometimes you just got to hit the road. Sometimes you got to be just different places. So it's all good. It's all good. So Janet, welcome back from Israel.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are glad to see everybody again. I should note that next Sunday, God willing, I'll be in Knoxville. I think it's February 1st. So people who want to come in person are welcome to do so. We of course will have this on Zoom as usual. Um, we are now going to be talking about the part of the life cycle we don't like to talk about in general, which is, of course, death and mourning. And this will probably be a couple of different.
Mhm.
There's probably be a couple of different sessions because there's a lot to discuss. There are a lot of things to throw around in all this. I should note that. First of all, I want to address or at least begin to approach. Catherine, you asked last week about death with dignity and Judaism's approach on that. And so, could you, because I'm happy to address some of that, could you define part of what that means?
Well, the non-politically correct way we used to call it was assisted suicide. When
Hmm.
somebody is at the end of their life, they're suffering, there's nothing you can do. To have it medically supervised, let them go to sleep.
I was standing so far away from it,
Right.
I could still
Um,
figure
so yeah, I mean, what I think you're, so yeah, so I it's a concept that is complicated in some ways in Jewish law, and it's worthwhile to go through a little bit of it. I actually took a look to honestly refresh my own memory on that topic because it is somewhat complex. Um, so there is a range, as it is with a lot of things. There is a range of different opinions on this question of uh, assisted suicide, right to die, however you want to put this. Um, uh, the overall idea that we start from is the sense that uh, life is a gift from God, and it is a temporary gift. And therefore, as we have alluded to in different ways in the past, we do whatever we can in general to um, to preserve. So there is a recognition, on the other hand, of what do we do when someone who is terminally ill is suffering. I think that in general, the question seems to revolve around that basic idea. And so there are a couple of concepts in Jewish law that try to tackle that question. I would say in general that the overall idea is that what we would call active euthanasia, that active euthanasia is considered is basically considered wrong, right? In other words, to actively um, uh, take someone who is not dying and cause their death, obviously, is not okay. What we seem to have differences of opinion have to do with passive or more passive euthanasia, more passive than active, I guess. So within the conservative movement, there are two particular rabbis who have kind of agreed to disagree on a couple of different matters, I guess. One is that of Rabbi Avraham Reisner, and the other one is Rabbi Elliot Dorff. Rabbi Reisner's is, I would say, a little stricter than Rabbi Dorff's is, but still, both are considered to be thoughtful approaches. So, what's Rabbi Reisner's point of view on this? Rabbi Reisner relies on an idea that somebody who is dying and is simply essentially waiting for that moment, that the halachic category, the category in Jewish law, is that of a goses. And with a goses, you are not allowed to withhold um, basically food and drink, right? You are not allowed to withhold typical sustenance. However, you are allowed to remove certain barriers, some of them artificial barriers, from death. And that usually has to do with medication. So the thought is that, okay, food and drink is something that, on a day-to-day basis, we all need, right? We all, and so the idea is that we're not supposed to avoid that. But
Can you spell that?
Goses,
Yeah,
Goses, I guess.
thanks.
Sure. And so so in that case, it's the idea is that you're still doing sort of day-to-day things, but medication, especially, sort of experimental medication in some cases, when it has been determined that the person is suffering and then you're allowed to withhold that. Rabbi Dorff, meanwhile, looks at the rule having to do with another category of a person's status, which is that of a treifa. I would say treifa, I would say Treifa. And a treifa usually refers to a soldier wounded in battle. And in that case, you are allowed to withhold both medication and food and drink. So it essentially that's essentially it's a question of within a kind of a passive model where it is clear that death is imminent and there is great suffering. The question is, what do we withhold? Not that we do nothing active to make the death happen faster, but sometimes we remove certain barriers. That's generally how we apply to it.
So
Death with dignity. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
When somebody's laying and they've got the end of life paperwork, is pulling the plug on somebody who is never going to fully recover or is just being kept alive by a machine, is that, what category does that fall into?
I think certainly according to Rabbi Dorf's interpretation, that would be considered to be like an artificial medication of sorts, keeping the person alive by unnatural means. So I think there is, at the very least, some justification to doing so when of course it is felt to be the more merciful way of dealing with somebody in that situation. So there is at least some there is at least some opening for that in such a case. Obviously, um, encouraging people to sign ethical wills, to have what's the uh, what's the acronym for it?
You're talking about a living will?
Yeah, a living will, but also just
Healthcare directive?
healthcare directive. A what is a
Yeah.
resuscitation.
A
DNR.
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 NOR. Yeah, thank you. Okay,
There's
yeah,
also DNH, which is do not hospitalize, that my mother requested.
right, right. So obviously, I mean, and that is something that we do unquestionably uh that we are unquestionably encouraging people to be able to have that just in case that becomes a question.
What's the distinction with a soldier wounded in battle? I mean, if it's on the battlefield, you might not have the opportunity to do that for somebody. But are they talking
Sure.
about on the battlefield, or are they talking about if they've been hospitalized?
Well, I mean, it's I mean, I think what he's so look, when these rabbis, come up with these categories. I'm not saying come up with these categories, but when they kind of, look into these different categories of status, um, essentially what, uh, yeah, I mean, look, I won't say that the matter of a wounded soldier is necessarily, the perfect point of comparison. But it is a point of comparison where you can find um, more lenient positions in terms of how to, uh, how to deal with the question of a person's, person's pain, a person's, um, the agony that they might feel, and how to deal with it in a more merciful way without compromising the importance of the integrity of life. So I don't know, and this is one where, like, I don't know enough about I can't say that I know enough about the wounded soldier per se, but I know that um essentially, I mean, there are times where, and this is sort of an overall comment on Jewish law, there are times where rabbis are asked questions in which there may not be obvious or evident um ways to deal with it without going against the traditional understandings of Jewish law. And those rabbis, they say they want to say yes. Right? They want to be able to help somebody, and they want to look for some justification according to Jewish law to justify to truly find a way to say yes. And sometimes that can be done, and sometimes it's really hard to find that. So the example of a treifa might not be a perfect parallel, but it is one that allows a more compassionate result. So that's the best I can do to respond to that. It's a fair question, obviously. So when you're talking about and what I think we're going to get to today is really the question of death and sort of going through a typical funeral, and then we can talk about mourning more next week. So when it comes to when somebody dies, I want to first note the categories. I think I may have mentioned this before, but it's important to note the categories of what it means to lose a close loved one. And again, these are technical categories. This is not a statement of what one's actual relationship might be. But that typical definition has to do with when you are dealing with the imminent or actual death of a spouse, a one's, God forbid, children, one's parents, or one's siblings. Those are the categories of like a close family relation as defined in the Torah. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't other relationships that we have that aren't close, that aren't important. For many people, one's, we might have a very special relationship with one or more grandparents, with aunts and uncles, or what have you. So this isn't to say that you can't be imminently, intimately involved in um, caring for and dealing with the death of someone who isn't in those traditional categories. But in terms of what is required, in terms of mourning, it's really those categories. I have had the good fortune to not have to mourn any one of those traditional categories in my own family. Um, uh, Others are, I consider myself lucky in that case. I know not everybody, has that. What I would say though is that
Everybody gets there.
everybody gets there. Yeah, everyone gets there, and so I recognize that there, that there may be limitations to what I can say in terms of personal experience. I will say though that three of my four grandparents I knew very well, and I do observe their yard sites. I observe the anniversaries of their deaths. I do say Kaddish for them. And so I recognize it's not the same thing, but I also think that it's okay to broaden that definition if we need, if we feel so compelled. What happens when we are dealing with the immediate aftermath of someone's death? Obviously, the first thing we do is, contact a funeral home and if one is, affiliated with a congregation, certainly to inform the congregation. Your goal when your goal is to, if at all possible, to reduce the amount of time between a death and a funeral. You want to make that period of time as short as possible. Now, I say this recognizing that we recently had a death at Heskamuna where the funeral is going to be more than a week after. And there are a couple of different reasons. Part of it had to do with my availability to officiate, but also they when talking to the next of kin, they were talking about how one of them was going to have a medical procedure and also concerns about the weather in Knoxville and the ability and potential inability for people to travel. So there are ways in which a funeral can be delayed. And I do find that we do tend to be a little more, compassionate with people who say, this person has this close relative who lives in Bangladesh or whatever it is, and they need time to be able to get there, and they really want to be at the funeral. I tend to be fairly lenient on that sort of thing. There are other circumstances that can delay a funeral that I would say is beyond general control. One of those being, if for some reason a death requires the intervention of a medical examiner. Right, if there's any sort of suspicion of foul play, if there's some sort of there's some unknowns there, sometimes a medical examiner says, okay, we need to look into this before we release the body. And at that point, like, we don't have control over that. I mean, we're pretty much at their mercy in terms of timing is concerned. Another one, which is which I feel like I've dealt with more often, is the question of when a body needs to be transferred across state lines. So I dealt with this a bit in New Jersey when there would be a death of a congregant, and the congregant had retired to Florida. And there was a matter of, and it's like, okay, well, the state of Florida, or most states, won't just allow you to willy-nilly transfer a dead body across state lines without there has to be some sort of clearance. So it can take some time for to of that. So in other words, like, so there were numerous circumstances where it's like, all right, well, the person's burial plot is in New York or is in New Jersey, but they died in Florida. Okay, well, sometimes it might take a couple days, a few days to get that body from one place to another. But the ideal is to do the funeral as relatively soon as you can. Because for the sake of the mourners are in this kind of betwixt and between state. And we have a certain responsibility to we have a certain responsibility to the mourners, that we have a certain responsibility for the memory of the one who has died. As many things as possible between a person's death and the funeral has to be done for, the concept is kavod hamet, which means honor to the one who has died. Essentially, it means that from the time of death until the time where the burial has completed, our concern is to honor that, honor the both the the memory and to be kind to the body of the person who has died.
So this, you may have covered this last week. I don't know what you did last week, but autopsies.
Okay.
Are you frozen?
Mhm.
No, you're there. Yeah.
I'm there. I thought. Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking about freezing the body. I'm sorry. I
No,
didn't
no, not
realize.
freezing the body. No, you sort of your
Oh,
picture froze, so I
did
think
my screen
I
freeze?
was talking about the
Sorry.
subject of autopsies
Yeah.
because, well, when my father died, he had a neurological disease, and they did an autopsy because they wanted to know exactly what it was. But and nobody cared. I mean, my parents were not religious, but when we were just in Israel, and there was I don't know if you're aware, there was this huge, there was there were babies that died at a Haredi unlicensed daycare center. Yeah, there were like 53 children crammed into closets and bathrooms. Two of the children died, and they didn't know exactly what happened, and they wanted to do autopsies on the two babies, and the community went absolutely berserk, and the courts decided that there should be no autopsy because it was contrary to Jewish law or something like that. So that they'll never really know what happened. And apparently it had something to do with the heat or lack of heat. I don't know. But they were like carting out like dozens of babies, and two of them actually died.
God.
So I guess it was in Jerusalem. Yeah, of course it was in Jerusalem. But anyway, it was
Yeah.
just, so what's the official, I mean, clearly the Haredim object to autopsies, but what's the deal with that?
Okay. So I think what this this comes down to the question of when we are buried,
Yeah.
we are to be buried with as much of our, uh, for lack of a better term, as much of our stuff as possible.
Yeah.
Meaning, with our bodies as intact as it possibly can. Now, why is that? Why is that so important?
Judgment Day.
Yeah, kind of. So, what I've actually decided to do is that after our two conversations on um, death and mourning, I figured that that may be a good time to insert the conversation about the afterlife and Jewish views on the afterlife, which is a whole other thing. So, so that's coming. Our conversation about that.
Okay.
The
Ra-
the philosophy is
Rabbi,
that, yep,
I understand that you want to be buried with your body intact.
sure,
And for years, I've marked myself as not doing any organ donations because of that.
yep.
And I understand I can donate blood because blood replenishes and I'm still living. What is the view now on organ donations?
Oh, good
Organ,
question.
yeah, organ donations are permitted. They are permitted, and look, obviously, it's anyone's choice. I mean, look, it's anyone's choice to do so. So let me go a little bit into that, and I'll get back to the question of organ donation and autopsy for a second. What's the idea of burying, like making sure that our bodies are as intact as possible? Because the idea is that it's based on an interpretation of a philosophy that when the Messiah comes, there is a strand of thought. Not everyone believes this, but there's a strand of thought that that Jews who had died would be revived. And so therefore we're going to need our bodies for our revival. Now,
Oh,
my
come on. They can revive us. They can't put the parts back.
well, that's my feeling too. That's my feeling too. I mean, like, yeah, so my feeling is that, and I'm not alone in this, right? Is that to be an organ donor means that you have the opportunity that somebody after death has the opportunity to save a life of somebody else, right? So I would rather, I mean, it is to me, it is a higher priority to make a part of my body available after I've died, to make a part of my body available to somebody who needs it, whose life may be preserved, than to rely on this conjecture, or to rely on this, theory that, oh, we're going to need all of our body parts. My feeling is that, you know what, if the Messiah, if there's a Messiah that comes and can revive me, he can also take care of the spleen, like, what I'm saying? Like, like he can, like, if that much of a miracle can happen, then the miracle, then, restoring my liver shouldn't be that much of a stretch.
Then why wouldn't that work for cremation, or is that because of the Holocaust? Is a cremation?
Well, yeah. So cremation is a whole other matter, right? I mean, and
apparently whoever made these rules
be,
has never
though.
seen a body in a grave after a period of time. That it's going to have to do a whole lot of rebuilding parts anyway.
exactly.
Whether they're ashes or whether there's organ misses. I mean, like, where did this come up with this stuff? They apparently never seen a dead body after a decade.
Yeah. No. I mean, no, it's true. It's true.
If there's something besides your body, presumably, otherwise there's no point, to the whole resurrection thing, You know what I don't mean, you know what I mean.
Sure.
Then the body doesn't really matter, because I mean, whether you're cremated or whether you're just a skeleton or whether you're missing a part, because the part that matters is still there. So the rest is just like the packaging. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. No.
And I would think
you're not just waiting in the ground.
Right.
There's more to an afterlife, which you're going to get to later. There's waiting in the ground for a few million years.
Right. And so essentially, yeah. So because of this, I tend to have a more lenient view on autopsies. I tend to have a more lenient view on organ donation, because of, it's not like this understanding of the potentials of the afterlife. It's not like those have been confirmed. It's not, I mean, those are, maybe, beliefs that some people hold, but but they're tenuous at best, right? There are still plenty of people who don't hold those ideas. And so, but the idea, but our idea in general is to, is to preserve the body in a dignified way, right? I mean, an autopsy maybe something different. I once dealt with a case where a congregant of mine had passed away, and her wish was for her brain to be donated to science. And I could tell that this meant so much to the family. And I said, is that, and I said, I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I mean, if that's something that was important to to her, I'm not going to stand in the way of that. But the idea is, so again, but going back to the idea of kavod hamet, right, of dignity to the one who has died. I mean, the idea is that, all right, so for an autopsy, okay, there may be a matter of state, there may be a matter of civil law that has to be addressed. For, science, that may be its own thing. For an organ donation, and you may be able to save another, a different life. Those are all, understandable, or, reasons potentially. But you have to have a reason, right? You have to have a good, a good reason for, to compromise in that sense. one of the ways that we bring dignity to somebody who has died is what is known as tahara, which is the washing of a body so that they can be prepared. They can be, their body can be prepared for um, going into the casket, going into a coffin. Um, eh, and so I've actually participated in a handful of these sessions where I've, and oftentimes these are uh, people who, members of the community who volunteer, quite kindly.
I did
Um,
it in New Jersey. Yeah.
yeah, I
It
mean,
felt like a
so
huge honor to be able to do that.
an honor and also something that it was an incredibly moving experience because you know um so and as you might expect, only men are, prepare male bodies, only women prepare female bodies. um we're supposed to do so quietly and not with anything, and not with any, not being, jovial in any way. I mean, obviously there's a certain amount of sadness. I mean, I know that should be obvious, but it is, you're trying to deal with this moment, and again, in a dignified way. And there is this moment that's just absolutely beautiful where once the body has been prepared, everything's done, and before we leave, we everybody who participated we all place our hands on the caskets, and the leader of the group says, if we have embarrassed or dishonored you in any way, we truly apologize.
I wonder if they all do that.
Well, what's that?
I guess I'm the guy who says, yes, and in Heskamuna, we have a committee for that.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And we do have what's called a Hevra Kadisha committee, both men and women's, who do that. And we're the only ones in the area. So upon request, we do temple members, J-Corps members.
J-Corps has their own too, that I've done it out
Do
there.
it
I
seemed
don't
like
know
we
if
just
it's a
did
standing
some.
committee or they just kind of somebody organized it when it's time, but there was a person who knew what we were supposed to do, and I was the dummy. Just keep my mouth shut and do what I'm told to do. But they had somebody who knew how to do it, but I'm not sure how formally organized it is, and I presume it's still going on.
I thought we'd just done somebody from J-Corps, but I could be wrong. But we get called upon to do people who are not affiliated sometimes as well. So if you want in on that, I've heard that there have been discussions about, it's like a lot of Heskamuna committees, uh, as time goes by, there are fewer people, and there have been sort of inter committee discussions about who's going to do us when we go. So you can get in on that.
Is there a membership requirement?
I don't know.
Because I'd be willing to help do it, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to join an additional synagogue.
Well, okay. Yeah, and that's something we can, we can talk. I mean, I'm sure we can, talk through those possibilities. But I mean, I think the important thing is that it is considered to be a great mitzvah to to help in this
I'll
way.
consider it. My theory is if somebody's going to do it for me, I'll be willing to do it for somebody else.
Sure. No.
But since we got you off track, I wouldn't be here if I didn't want your opinion on stuff. But it gets confusion sometimes when you say I'm leaning on this stuff. I'm wondering, well, is that just the rabbi? Is that the Reform theory, or is that the same with Reform and conservative? Whose
So
opinion are we talking about here on things?
all right, so I would say in general when I say that I'm a little more lenient on X, Y, and Z, I generally I almost always am referring to lenient within the conservative movement's um tent, if you will. Um because we do try, I mean, there is an understanding of, and this phrase, I'm not sure if I've used this phrase in this class, but the idea of that there are 70 faces of Torah. And in other words, that there can coexist uh, a range of opinions on certain things. Um, and so, like I said, in some ways, I would say that compared to my colleagues within the movement, I may be on the more lenient side. If I'm more, I hope that if I would be completely outside of the movement, that I would indicate that. So yeah, so I think that's what I mean in terms of leniency. There are areas where I think I'm less lenient than some of my colleagues. So yeah, it just kind of depends. But yeah, every community has within it, a Marada Atra, somebody who has been, essentially it's the rabbi of the community, of that congregation or community, that is the one who makes the final call on matters of Jewish law for that congregation. So that's part of my role at Heskamuna, is to be the Marada Atra. So yeah, so I think that's my overall approach there.
Rabbi,
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
you mentioned coffin. Is that a Jewish requirement, or is that going to be more of a local or state requirement?
Okay, so I may be, kind of mixing up terms of coffin and casket or what have you. The idea is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we talk about there's this idea of when a person has died, that there's this principle of going from dust to dust, that we were made of dust, we were created from dust, and we return to the dust. And so what we try to do is, whenever possible, allow that natural process of returning to dust to take place as expediently as possible. So therefore, it is common for Jews to be buried in a plain pine box, something that will allow the natural course of things, to happen as naturally as, as expediently as possible. There are some places where that is very difficult to do. And that often has to do with the water tables of the level of water in, in a certain area. So, which obviously is becoming more and more of an issue. In Charleston, it is not uncommon for within the the burial plots to have to be buried in a concrete vault, because of the because of the concerns of water coming up when you dig the plot.
Well, in Tennessee, the cemeteries I'm familiar with, and it may well be state law, you have to have one of those for a burial. But I was thinking it was so it when the body and the coffin disintegrate, the gravesite doesn't sink, but they
Right.
may be bottoms too. I just thought it was something that they set over the top so it didn't sink. But I wondered it. I mean, when I go out motorcycle riding, I drive by a whole lot of old cemeteries, and I wonder how come they haven't sunk. It seemed like they would have
Right.
sunk by now.
Yeah. No, yeah. So the water level makes a big difference in all of this. Um, so that expedience is considered to be important. Um, I want to touch a little bit on funerals themselves before we're out of time here. Um, in terms of funerals, again, I want to go back to this concept of kavod hamet, which I know might sound like a pretty obvious idea, but it's important, especially when we are uh, dealing with matters of eulogies. Um, Sometimes funerals only take place at the graveside. Sometimes the funerals will start in an indoor place, sometimes a synagogue or a funeral home, funeral chapel, and then we go to actually do the burial. Um, the idea is to make it obviously a dignified ceremony, but to not make it way longer than it has to be. Um, a eulogy, I do think it's important for me to offer, um, family members or, close friends the opportunity to speak, about the memory of the person who's died. Um, it should be about the person who has died and not about them, not about the speaker, which again should be obvious, but you may be surprised at the times where people will deliver a eulogy and it turns into uh, essentially their own little therapy, like a public therapy session about their relationship with the one who has died, as opposed to learning anything about the one who has died. Um, we are supposed to bring honor to that person. Now, that's not to say, by the way, like if there is somebody who has died who is, where there are funny stories, it's okay to say a funny story within reason, of course. But it's okay to, if they were a funny person, okay, you can, saying something that might make you smile or giggle at something is not a bad thing, if it is befitting of the person that we are remembering. Um, we should, however, our best to not harp on a person's flaws. Right? The idea is to keep it positive whenever possible. I'm not saying um, that we need to lie about it or anything like that. I may have told this story at some point, but uh, there was one of my colleagues years ago was in Long Island, I think, and he did a funeral for somebody who was part of the Jewish mob. He was a gangster. So what are you going to say that's I mean, like, he did so many terrible things. And the one thing he found out is that he had made donations to animal rights groups. So he made the whole eulogy about what he did for animal rights groups. Right? Because again, you're trying to find the positive. Um, you know, the joke goes that you're that a rabbi's doing a funeral and he hears all these terrible, horrible things about the person, and he says, and so he tries to get out of saying much of a eulogy, and so he says, rather than me explaining, saying a bunch of things, why don't I give you an opportunity, you who are here in the congregation, to honor this person? And that the room was just silent until finally one person raises his hand and says, "His brother was worse." So hopefully it doesn't come to that, right? But again, the idea is to bring honor, right? To bring honor as best we can. We also are showing reluctance, meaning we wish for a burial to happen as reasonably soon as possible after a death. We are not
Rabbi, you're frozen.
And I'm afraid there's no co-host, so I don't know what that means.
Oh, it happens towards the end, right?
Hopefully he can get himself back in.
It
Well,
does
no.
like it happens a lot at the end when he does it from his car.
I know there's
Car.
a tradition to for the mourners to put dirt onto the casket.
Yeah.
Sure.
We Now he's gone. And we're not supposed to use the good end of the shovel. We're supposed to do it upside down to show our reluctance. So I don't know if that's where he was going with that, but
But some Christian funerals do the dirt too, either with a shovel or just by hand. But I've never seen that been done with the shovel upside down, because that's kind of hard to pick up dirt with the shovel upside down.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay. Actually, in my family,
I don't
you do
understand
the
this concept
Sorry.
of reluctance. What are we reluctant about when we're burying a loved one?
Well, we're reluctant to say goodbye.
Okay, well, okay,
Yeah,
true.
yeah. It's okay. We're reluctant. We're
Two-
reluctant. We're reluctant to say goodbye. We're reluctant to. We're not. It's not like we can't wait to. Okay, pardon the expression, but
You're not
it's not
happy
like,
they died,
yeah, we're not happy they died. We're not excited to get rid of this person. Pardon the phrase, but that's what we mean by reluctance. So for instance, when we walk from the when we proceed, we stop 7 times. We pause 7 times to not make it seem like we're just racing to get to dispose of the body. I mean, look, I apologize. I don't mean to be crass about it, but
I don't want to make it look like we're rushing to get to the meal after the funeral.
exactly. And
Ever, in the case of somebody who's terminally ill and suffering, it is a blessing that they finally passed. It's hard to accept that in that moment of tears and sorrow, but it's true.
I hear you.
Not
That they're not
reluctant.
suffering
Still sad they're
anymore.
gone.
Yeah.
I mean, they may have been suffering and you're glad that they're no longer suffering, but you're still sad that their life is that they're gone. It can be both.
Yeah, it's one of those where we're holding two ideas, two somewhat different ideas at the same time. But yeah, Catherine, your point is well taken. I mean yeah.
Sorry, the thing about organ donation, just not to go back to it, isn't that sort of like life trumps everything? It's like, the expression to save one life is as if you've saved an entire world. So I would think that, that's why organ donations are allowed, because you're saving a life.
It's a great mitzvah. I mean, that I always think when I do all the blood donations, that's a small mitzvah I can do for people I don't know.
Indeed.
Well,
And
I'm
so,
going to either jump ahead or jump back, because this is something really important to me. My understanding, and I've had to deal for once so far, rabbis supposedly are not supposed to conduct funerals for even somebody, even if it's Jewish, if it's not in a Jewish cemetery, which is hard if they've got relatives that they're going to be buried with in an area of a cemetery that they've got grave sites for the non-Jewish members. So is this something that's all rabbis do, or just some rabbis do, and why? That seems like if the person is Jewish, you ought to be able to go where they are.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Well, my son died. It was during COVID, so it didn't make the rabbi wouldn't leave his house to start with. But anyway, he called and said he could have come to the funeral, even though he couldn't conduct it as a friend. But he or another rabbi that I'd learned when I was going through my conversion process, or joining the tribe, as I think it, that unless you're being buried in the Jewish cemetery, you can't be buried by a Jewish rabbi. And I'm thinking, man, what about all the military cemeteries and stuff like that during World War II? And there's plenty of Star of Davids out there. A Jewish chaplain couldn't come out there. I bet you the chaplains did, but normal non-chaplain rabbis supposedly can't bury somebody unless even they're Jewish, unless it's in a Jewish cemetery. And that makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
So the way that it hasn't been an issue, that hasn't been an issue for me. And the reason why is that because here's the thing. You can make it even if it's for lack of a better phrase, a mixed cemetery. In other words, cemeteries of people of different religions. There are very tasteful ways to kind of carve out a Jewish section.
Well, that is the way it is in Oak Ridge. But I'm talking about if the people he's going to be.
Lost Will.
Sorry, you're muted.
I hit mute. That's the way it is in Oak Ridge. They got a Jewish section, but the cemetery has got right next to it is a Catholic section. Then there's got other kind of sections scattered around. But if the person they're being next to, like maybe their grandparents or something like that, are not Jewish, they're saying it's not a carved out section. It's just a mixed cemetery. It just happens to be the person they were getting married to next to is that's not Jewish, and they're saying you can't do that.
Right. It's so okay. I think I understand a little better. I don't. I think there are. I mean, I'm sorry to hear that happened in your family's circumstance. I think there are definite ways to accommodate, at least, from my training. I think there are ways to accommodate. I think the circumstances that you're speaking of, I'm sorry that it turned out the way it did in your particular situation.
That's not a rule.
Yeah.
I kind of accepted that when I joined the tribes. Okay, but it never became an issue till my son died. I kind of would like the rabbi had to do it, but and if the president of the congregation did it, he did the same thing that the rabbi would have done.
Okay. Well, so what I can do is, maybe that because I want to respect everybody's time here, because we're about to hit 11 o'clock. So I do want to, let me do a little reading about this, so maybe I can, I can perhaps give something a little more definitive next time. But we'll talk more about sort of the aftermath of the funeral and what the process of mourning is when we meet next week. And again, we'll be in person and also on Zoom next week. So hopefully, so for those who'd like to be the synagogue with me on February 1st, that'd be great. So I appreciate it very much. And thanks as always for the participation. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.